You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And as always, we are your hosts for this show. And so tonight, we actually thought we would take a stab at something we haven't done in a while, and that's talk about Star Wars news. I mean, in the time that we've been reviewing all these series, don't forget, Monday we're going to review episode 2 of Visions. Have you watched it yet? I haven't.
No, I haven't. I haven't. Yeah.
I was going to say, maybe we get a sneak peek on whether or not you'll actually like this episode or not. I mean, true, if we're a betting man, it's like, yeah, I would say it would probably be a good bet that maybe you're not going to enjoy it. But hey, who knows? There was some episodes last season.
That's true.
Yeah, so we'll see. But tonight, one of the things that has been talked about, I think for a while now, actually, is this new Rey sequel that's coming out. Ronaldo says, "What's up, guys? What's up, Ronaldo?"
Ronaldo.
And since Ronaldo actually has Rey in his name, which is a nice little play on
right
on how he's doing this. Yeah, Reynaldo. But this is one of those movies that I think is really going to divide the Star Wars audience. And I think as it gets closer, you're going to find people are either going to be increasingly skeptical or they're going to maybe go, the teaser trailer or whatever looked okay. I mean, let's see where it goes. But as of right now, I think a lot of people are asking, why is this movie being made?
Yeah. I could definitely see why people might, definitely would have the hesitancy of viewing this particular film. But let's try to look at things from all angles. So let's ask ourselves the question, why? Is it that you don't like the character of Rey? Do you not like the actress that's playing Rey? Or are you just not interested in her, I guess, story? Or do you feel like, or are you just having issues more so with the franchise in and of itself?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of people, there might be a combination. Although I will say this, so I'll try to, as best as I can, embody the entire fan base. Because I think that there's a couple things, like some of the questions that you bring up, I definitely think are things that people will be divided. In other words, they'll have differing, I don't want to say divided, they'll have differing opinions on it. There are other things, though, that I think that pretty much, like, for instance, I don't necessarily think that people have a problem with the actress, right? I don't think Daisy Ridley is somebody that people necessarily have a problem with. I think that they might have a problem with the character in some ways, but I don't think anybody is blaming Daisy Ridley or her performance or any of that stuff. I think that actually people are a little bit more sympathetic, like, hey, she did what she could with what she had. And obviously she's gone on to prove herself to be a good actress. But getting into this, this is basically based on, at least our source, is movieweb.com. And they basically talked about Kathleen Kennedy gave us a few more details. So we have some new details on this upcoming Rey sequel. And there's like 2 paragraphs where there's some quotes from Kathleen. And one of them, she says, you'll have to excuse me for looking over. My computer's over here, so. It says, what we're exploring is the evolution of the Jedi. We're moving 15 years after the rise of Skywalker. The First Order has fallen. The Jedi are in chaos. There's even a question of how many exist anymore. And Rey's building the new Jedi Order based on the text that she was given and that Luke imparted on her. Now, from that standpoint alone, I think that that's probably a good direction to take it, because I think where people are a little bit sensitive right now is why are you going to make, if not the first film, one of the first films, a direct sequel to a trilogy that was widely disappointing
Divisive
to most fans? Because while it was divisive, I think that overall, even the people that liked it, I think that they could admit that maybe it wasn't what we were promised or what we hoped for. So there's that.
Yeah. Here's my thing. I think the biggest, because like you said, I don't think the problem is with Daisy Ridley, because the whole time Daisy Ridley herself has never been attacked. Her character in the films have been attacked, sure, but the character herself, and that's what, and I make that distinction because we've seen it where, Ahmed Best has been ridiculed,
Yeah. Poor guy.
Moses Ingram, phenomenal actress, but she's even been kind of dragged a little bit, right? You've had other you have had other actors or actresses in the franchise who have kind of been Jake Lloyd, who have been dragged through the proverbial mud, so to speak. When we're talking about their character, and it's more so like them, not their character, right? So
yeah,
Ahmed Best ruined Star Wars. No, he didn't. Jar Jar Binks ruined Star Wars for you, not Ahmed Best. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's an important distinction, actually.
Yeah.
Let me get to a couple of these chats that Ronaldo's pointed out. This is actually, he goes, actually, most people don't call me Ronaldo. They call me Ray. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it would almost be like, I mean, this isn't the case with me, but, a lot of people could call me Rick instead of Eric.
Right.
But, I discourage that, actually. He goes on to say, the reason is that her movies made $1 billion. And this brings up a good point, too, is the fact that, and this is where I would make a little bit of a distinction. I mean, I see where you're going with this. However, I have to say that the allure wasn't necessarily, oh, it's movies featuring Ray that made all this money. No, it's movies featuring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Peter Mayhew, Carrie Fisher. It's people wanted to see the continuation of the franchise, the stuff that's been there before. It's not like people were like, ooh, this new Ray character is pretty cool. I want to see, what's going on there. Actually, a lot of people just tolerated this character, honestly. Most people thought she was completely overpowered. Most people were very disappointed that they featured more on her than the old characters because they figured that the veteran characters, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, would sort of pass the baton over time. Like this would be that transitional series. And you can certainly, you can make the argument that that is exactly what happened. It's just that I think that people thought it was going to feature the older cast a little bit more, kind of like one last hurrah, one last adventure, and then they would pass it on to these new people, rather than them being more or less supporting characters in these new characters' adventures, right?
Sure, and that's a very strong point, and I agree with you on that. I think a lot of people have had that thought process. I think the other problem is why a lot of folks aren't too excited about this is it's not so much that I mean, now some of the characters, once again, at first glance, cool, but the problem becomes the direction and the writing of it all. It always goes back to this. The problem with the sequel trilogy, why it bombed in a lot of people's minds, is that even though, yes, it made $1 billion, but like you said, it's because people want to see, the continuation of stuff. But I think the reason why it bombed in a lot of people's minds is because the characters really weren't as flushed out. I don't think there's a lot of pieces missing that people really couldn't get into these characters like they could with the originals.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had to. Chad writes in, he goes, great, a new nickname for Eric. Hey, Rick. It's like, oh, dude, no,
Yeah,
no. We're having a moratorium.
Come Monday.
Yeah, exactly.
soon as you walk in.
Well, I
I can hear it already.
As you know, there are worse things that I'm called over there. So,
yes,
Ronaldo says, I mean, I love those movies and I understand and respect the opinion of other fans. The money it made justifies the making of the new film. Yes, I mean, that's true from a marketing perspective. You sound like you got something you want to jump in with right away.
Well, I just think that a big thing is like, because you created brand new characters that you're going to do nothing with now. Like, okay, so you basically have this new super powerful Jedi in Rey. You got Poe Dameron, who's pretty much the heir apparent to Han Solo. You got John Boyega's character Finn, who's still around. Kylo's been gone. Okay, all the original cast members, Lucas joined, become one with the Force. Han is dead. Carrie Fisher or Leia has become one with the Force as well.
Both.
So now it's like, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, both of them.
I shouldn't really be laughing. That's insensitive, but all right.
But, you know, so when you really look at it, it's like, all right, you created these new characters only to do what with them now? But I think that's what everyone's afraid of, is because what are you going to do with these characters now?
Well, I will say this. First of all, before I do say this, Chad wanted to wish you a happy birthday from yesterday.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah. And then, of course, Ronaldo, let me just get these last couple of chats before I make this point. He said that's an interesting premise, meaning what we just read was, you know, that little synopsis that Kathleen Kennedy revealed. And then he says that I agree with that, but when we got to the third one, I think people started to like the new characters because at that point people knew what they were going to get.
Yeah.
And yeah, so here's the thing. This is all true, okay? But I think that what's going to protect this film is the fact that it does take place. This is something that wasn't mentioned here, but it was mentioned at Celebration. This actually takes place like 15 years or something after the Rise of Skywalker. So this is the chance that I think, and I don't necessarily want to say Daisy Ridley, because again, she's probably going to knock it out of the park no matter what she does, right? I mean, she's a good actress. She portrayed Rey perfectly fine. I mean, there was nothing wrong with her portrayal of that character. It's just, how do they write it? And unlike The Rise of Skywalker, I pray that they actually give her some challenges, obstacles, something that, you know, isn't just like a walk in the park like The Rise of Skywalker was. That was a problem that I had. Like The Force Awakens, I thought everything was handled fine. You did have a really big concentration on Han Solo, and Luke, even though he wasn't featured until the last scene, he was more or less a shadow over the whole film, actually, because they were sort of looking for him. You know, Leia played a prominent role, so it wasn't the adventure that I think all of us older fans wanted. But at the same time, I think that they did do a good job of balancing the older characters with the newer ones. Now, you can make the argument that the newer characters weren't as interesting as they could have been. But, you know, I think that the premise, at least, for this new film sounds promising if they handle it right. But again, it's, you know, because everybody was talking about the Duel of the Fates thing that Colin Trevorrow was supposed to do, what would have been Episode 9 if they hadn't replaced him with J.J. Abrams. And everybody's reading the script going, oh man, this is incredible. This is the Episode 9 we should have gotten. But look, there's no guarantee that once they put that thing on film, that it would have turned out the way it was on paper. You know, it's one thing to write a script. It's another thing to make a movie.
True.
You know, I mean, I mean, that could have, in a lot of people's minds, sucked just as bad. I mean, I didn't hate The Rise of Skywalker. There's a lot of people that did. I know John Campea infamously hated The Rise of Skywalker. Like, hated it. And I understand. I mean, people that hated The Last Jedi, people that hated The Rise of Skywalker, I get it. I don't necessarily go that far. I don't necessarily share that hatred or vitriol for it. I see the problems. that each of the films had.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that The Rise of Skywalker was a good ending film to the entire franchise. I mean, I enjoyed it. But at the same time, I think now, because this new film is going to have to stand on the shoulders mostly of the Rey character and whoever. There's rumors that John Boyega is going to be in it again as Finn. And I wouldn't mind them. You remember when we talked about this on a Rise of Skywalker review, which if you missed, it's on the channel. Actually, both of them are. The one from when we first reviewed it when it came out, and then the one for our What is Star Wars series. But during that review, I had talked about that Finn seemed like he was going to reveal maybe he was force sensitive. Maybe they could explore that a little bit in this film.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what it really boils down to is the fact that these characters need to be utilized intelligently and within the scope and the span and the true realm of Star Wars, basically. And I'm just saying is that, like, okay, Rey is a cool character, fine, but okay, we know that she was a Palpatine or whatever. She was kind of created from him. All right, now Luke, and they say, like, she's trying to start the Jedi Order and restart the Jedi Order. That's essentially what Luke was trying to do, and it seems like they're trying to take that story that Luke was trying to start, kind of begin, and they're trying to finish it through Rey.
Mm-hmm.
Because Mark Hamill, of course, was too old to really do it the way that they wanted to. The problem is now you don't have the characters like Thrawn or things like that. Now, what would be cool is if they brought in something like the Yuuzhan Vong, or if they brought in, because you're going to have something that's really going to put a challenge to Rey.
Exactly.
Because you've already made her almost, I don't want to say godlike, but you almost made her like super powerful very quickly in a way. So, and to that point, you have to give her a struggle. There is no Darth Vader. There is no Palpatine anymore. Like, now, what are you really? And there's no Thrawn, because Thrawn is not a factor in this. So now, who are you going to use, or what are you going to use to challenge Rey and her potential students? I think with John Boyega, we have to come up with a unified story for him. The problem with John Boyega's character of Finn was that, like, okay, you started off great. He's this excommunicated, or First Order, stormtrooper, or and it's like, all right, well, now you have him joining the Resistance, but is he more of a ground trooper general type person? Are we going to make him force sensitive and try to put him, under the tutelage of Rey now? What are we really doing? We kind of didn't complete his story either, because we really don't know what his purpose is. He's been running from it since the beginning, and I thought we were actually going to figure out, like, okay, look, this is what I want to do. I'm going to be the new Lando Calrissian or something like that. Like, there wasn't anything that for him to really latch on to. Poe Dameron, I don't know. Oscar Isaac say he, maybe if he needs another car or something, he'll do Star Wars or whatever. But I don't know if he's going to return. But once again,
he seemed a little softer on it in recent. They had actually asked him not too long ago, and he seemed a little, I don't know. I think honestly, a lot of people were just burnt out from the experience of that trilogy, and then of course all the hate everybody got. Maybe not personally, but just you're part of it.
Just a film. Yeah.
Other than what was her name? Marie Tran.
Kelly Marie Tran.
Yeah, Kelly Marie Tran. It's like I remember. Yeah, she got a lot of hate, but most of the main actors.
Another one that was dragged. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah. So, and that's what I mean. It's like, okay, so you have your big three now. We had, Han, Luke, and Leia before. Now we have Rey, Poe, and Finn. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if those are your three, but your setup for them, I mean, you kind of flesh Poe out a little bit more with The Last Jedi. That was kind of his swan song, if you will, where he had to learn how to become a leader and do things like in that regard.
And you could say that was actually continued in The Rise of Skywalker too, because that was really where it took firm hold.
Exactly. and he's had you can see the tutelage that he had with Leia. Leia was kind of like tutoring him and Rey at the same time.
Yeah.
Just in different aspects.
Let's get to a couple of these. Ronaldo says, see how much people like these characters when the movie comes out, if it happens. He also wanted to wish you a happy birthday. So yeah, that was yesterday.
Thank you.
This is a good point that he brings up too. He says, remember that Rey won't be the actual protagonist. I wonder if it's Broom Boy. And then he goes on to say, do you think the protagonist will be a Skywalker? These are all really good questions, actually, because that is true. Now, what's interesting is at Celebration, they did point out that Rey was going to be more of a supporting character, but that synopsis, though, sort of seemed a little Rey-centric to me. Now, it could be that when she restarts this Jedi Order or whatever, that whomever she finds, maybe that's going to be the main protagonist. But that is a good point, though, is that we do seem to get... We're getting a little bit of mixed signals here. So I do wonder.
What a shock. and that's the thing with Star Wars is right now. It's just
that's a good point, yeah.
There sometimes doesn't seem to be any cohesiveness in the overall plan. Now, Kathleen Kennedy was often comparing the new direction of Star Wars almost like the James Bond franchise, where she's like, okay, let's every 3 or 4 years put out a movie.
I was just about to bring that up, actually, that, now they're starting to go back to what we would call more the George Lucas model. Now, of course, before it was out of necessity. It was because the way technology was. I mean, it legitimately took a couple of years to make these films. They can make them quickly, but now they're starting to see, hey, maybe we make these things more like events. So...
yeah, and it gives you time to really, truly flesh out the story, run it through people. Because, like, if you're on this timeline where it's like, okay, we have to have this out. Now you got to meet with the group. You got to meet with these people. And it's like, okay, our stakeholders have to see it. Oh, do you like it? Are you signing off on it? Oh, we have to fire this director, but we have to bring in somebody else to tidy it up. Oh, guess what? You got 3 months to do it. It's like...
I know.
It's crazy.
I know, I agree. I think that's part of the reason why. But here's what I would say. This is what I would... If I had a line to Disney right now, I'd say, you know what? Don't worry about timelines. Just make a good film. Let it come out when it needs to come out. I mean, don't even do the whole, every 3 years thing. I mean, Lucas did that because that's how long it took to make the films.
Right.
But now, obviously, you can make them quicker if you wanted to. But just let the thing marinate a little, I mean, write it, shoot it, edit it, release it. However long that takes. I don't necessarily think it's rocket science. Maybe it's just me. I mean, and again, I mean, I understand the production world. Look, I get it. I mean, from the marketing standpoint, you have to set a date and you have to do the whole lead time thing and you have to market it correctly. And look, that's probably part of the reason why Solo failed, honestly. It was because we didn't even get a trailer until 2 weeks until the thing was coming out.
Right.
So I'm not blind to that part of it, but what I'm saying is let the production team do their thing. And then when it's ready, go, okay, it's pretty much ready. Now let's give it 6 months to a year that we can do a proper marketing campaign for it. Because look, it's been, I mean, when did the last one come out? 2019? It's 2023. I mean, we've been 4 years now without a Star Wars film. We're getting there. So nobody's dead. We're all still here. We have plenty of Disney Plus content to keep us busy. So
right, that's what I'm saying. And I think that's the cool thing about it, because we have this Disney Plus content that kind of keeps you going. If you still jonesing for something Star Wars related, you got stuff that you can kind of keep up with. But with this character though, and this is, well, I won't say the character, the movie. It needs to be shot, and go back old school with it. Like it needs to be scouted, location scouting, do it in the real place, and just really delve into these characters. Like, okay, you have possibly if you're going to do this is the only one time that you have to get this right.
Yeah.
Disney. Like you introduce these characters. Some people like them, some people don't. And the way that and it's probably because you're juxtaposing that to, you got the original trilogy characters in there who we all know and love. And that's a big part of the reason why we came to the theater,
right,
to see them.
Yes.
They're gone now. So right now you have a palette that's basically more or less fresh to really give us a compelling reason as to why we really care about Rey, Finn, and Poe.
Well, I'll say this. I agree with you 100%. They have to get this. This is the film. If this is the next one. If this is the next one. Right. If this doesn't work, the franchise is done. At least in the film world. I mean,
at least if you're gonna go sequel. Now, if you do everything prior to, there's still hope because you still have Taika Waititi's film that's still kind of in the works.
Yes,
you still have this mysterious Rian Johnson trilogy. We still have the James Mangold film coming out. So we still have those things that because the problem is the follow-up. You're following the Skywalker saga.
See, that's why I don't know. Well, that's my thing. I don't know if this is the smartest move. I mean, one of the things that I thought, now again, have they actually, I mean, I'm actually asking. I'm asking you, I'm asking anybody that might know. Because I don't actually remember this. Is this the next film? Have they actually confirmed that?
I want to say yes.
Yeah, I know you do. But that's the thing. I'm not sure because the way that the announcements have come, like at Celebration, they talked about, okay, there's this film, the James Mangold film, like you said, and then of course they brought up all the other ones, like the Taika Waititi one and the stuff where, it's still out there. The Ryan trilogy hasn't been canceled. I mean, really, the only thing that's really been canceled that we know of, and there is hope on that, is the Patty Jenkins one, the Rogue Squadron. Now Ronaldo, this is great, says Rian Johnson trilogy. Haha, that's a good joke. Well, and that's the one, honestly, that I have a lot of hope for, to be honest, because he has said a million times, look, this isn't going to be based on any established characters. And that's why I go back and forth with this, honestly, because on one hand, from a marketing perspective, it probably makes sense for them to do this film because there's already an established universe and storyline, you know what I mean? I mean, I get it, Star Wars, it's all established universe, but I mean, we've lived in this era, this Force Awakens like this post-sequel trilogy era that they're talking about. It's further enough ahead that you can tell some fresh stories and it's kind of like starting over, but you do have the history of that sequel trilogy to fall back on, and the marketing department's going to love that. Well, while you're pondering that, let me get to this tweet. Not tweet. Listen to me. Like we're actually like bringing Twitter into this. Ronaldo says, pretty sure Ryan's movies won't happen. I don't know. I go back and forth on that, actually. There's part of me that agrees with that because they have been out there for a while. But I also think, and this gets into the conversation that we were starting to have, actually, with this whole, hey, they're thinking of making it more like an event, have a movie every 3 years or whatever. Well, how are they going to fit all these? They've already announced like 3 or 4 movies. Where are they going to put all these things? Because if you don't do these every year now, and you're going to put like 3-4 years between films, you're going to be, with what they've announced already, they're into like 2031 or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? And Ronaldo actually kind of alludes to the same thing. He says, if I remember correctly, the next movie will come out in December of 2025. It's like 2025.
Yeah, I'm hearing. Well, I'm looking up stuff, and it says that the next film is going to be New Jedi Order. It's going the new film, which is the Rey film that we're speaking of.
Well, I mean, again, and it's sort of like you alluded to a little earlier in the episode. I mean, that's what they're saying now. I mean, who really knows? You know, they contradict themselves constantly. I was actually surprised at Celebration they talked about the Lando series again. Because one of the things that I had talked about was at one of the prior celebrations, when they listed all those TV series that were coming out on Disney Plus, and Lando, you know, they had a little logo and card or whatever for that. And all of a sudden, you heard nothing about it. Like zero. And then all of a sudden at this celebration, they're like, no, Lando's happening. And, you know, Donald Glover's really excited and all this other stuff. Okay, that statement right there gave us more information than what we've had about Lando in a long time. And this goes back to something that I know you've talked about. I think I've mentioned it before too. And I know other YouTubers have talked about this. If they would just give us some information, right? Like just keep us, and I don't even mean give us like every little thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just keep the fans informed. Hey, listen, this is what we're thinking. You know, this is a plan. And I mean, it goes either way, right? Because if you lay out this plan and it doesn't work out, then the fans crucify you for basically saying, well, you know, you shouldn't have given us all this information. But then, if they don't give us information, then everybody starts yapping about that. By the way, I know this is kind of random, but it just occurred to me that y'all need to like this video. I'm just saying. We're having a really good conversation here. We got some good chats going on. This video is worthy of a like. I have spoken.
This is the way.
This is the way. Yes. The likes, of course, help the algorithm. You know, there's some people watching this tonight. Likes actually help us. It's nothing for you to click that. It means everything to us. I mean, come on. What are you waiting for? But yes, that's one of the things that I was thinking about is the fact that they give us this information, but the problem I don't think is whether or not they give us information or don't give us information. The problem is they keep giving us information and then going back on it, and that is what starts to kill the franchise, in my opinion.
Well, so far we can say this. As of April, pre-production has already started on the James Mangold film, and it's slated to be released December of 2025.
Good. So I was ranting, you were able to look stuff up. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So given the fact that they already started pre-production on it, now to what degree, we don't know, but at least it's already been greenlit. It's moving. So I think it's a safe bet to say 2025, which makes sense because the Rey movie is not supposed to come out till 2027. So that would be a long time if that was the first movie.
That makes sense. But hey,
that makes sense.
Not to interrupt you real quick, but we do have a poll in the chats. Yeah, right. We have a poll in the chats right now. I just look, Ronaldo's probably the only person that's voting this so far. I just want to get people to vote in this thing. We got a poll in the chats asking if you guys even want to see this Rey movie. So just take 2 seconds or whatever, and it's just a simple yes or no thing, and just put in there, do you want to see a Rey movie or not? And while you guys are doing that, let me get to a couple of Ronaldo's chats or Rey's chats. He says, I don't think it'll be Filoni's. That's right. I forgot about the Filoni film. That's another one. That whole crossover thing that we talked about last week. Mm-hmm. Those shows will be on for a while, and his movie will be the end of the story. I tend to agree with that. I tend to agree that that movie is going to cap off the series. Now, we talked at length about, hey, are they going to, which season are they going to make the movie? Is it going to be like season 3 of Ahsoka and season 5 of, Mandalorian or whatever? But it does make sense, I will admit. It makes more sense to just wait until you're done and then make a crossover film. He goes on to say, I think they're afraid of telling what the plan and story is. And that makes sense because there have been many times when the studio told what the future plan was and fans got really mad about it. But see, I guess this is my problem with this. The reason why they get mad about it isn't necessarily because it's a dangerous thing where, you put the stuff out there. It's true. George Lucas gave us very, very basic information about things. Although we kind of knew where it was going, right? I mean, everybody loved the original trilogy, so that wasn't a problem. And then when it came to the prequels, everybody was kind of like, all right, we kind of get where they're going here. With this stuff, though, I don't necessarily think they need to give plot details. That's not what I mean by information. They don't even have to necessarily give us the films. What I'm saying is this. If you tell me at a celebration, hey, we're announcing a Lando series, I just want a rough idea when I can expect it. I mean, yeah, things change. Just keep us informed. Hey, you remember that Lando series we announced 2 years ago? Yeah, we're pushing it back. Here's a rough idea of the movies that are going to be coming out that you guys can get hyped up for. Hey, the Patty Jenkins movie? We're not going to do that. And the Rian Johnson trilogy, we're going to push into like 2030 or something. It's just about keeping the fans informed, right? Not guessing.
Well, see, here's the problem, and even in that, and I agree with you, but it's kind of like if someone tells you, okay, like we always say, like, be honest with your fans or be honest with people, just be upfront and tell them what's going on, right?
Yes.
So we all love and appreciate that. Now, the problem is that, okay, being upfront and honest with you about what's going on. And you could like at the first, it's like, okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate that. But then if you keep telling me like, okay, well, now this is happening. Now this is happening. And although you're still being upfront and honest, it does put that sense of doubt into you. Like, what the heck is going on? Because even though you still want to be informed, it's still kind of, if you keep hearing that, well, I can't do it right now, I got to do this. Well, okay, yeah, and then no, and then yeah, and then no. So then it keeps going backwards.
No, but here's my point, though. You're a professional studio. This is like your job. Your job is to make Star Wars content.
I know.
So my point is, in this being informative, yes, I understand that things happen. Maybe somebody was booked that you didn't think was booked. Maybe something costs a little bit more than you thought it would, so you got to push it back. Things happen, right? Or when COVID hit. I mean, that threw kind of a... Or the writer's strike. The writer's strike might throw some things off. Okay, I get that.
Right.
If you're a studio and your only job is to make this content, there shouldn't actually be a whole lot of changes.
That's my point, but that's what's happening. That's why I'm saying...
But I'm saying in the future, when I'm talking about being informative, I know what you're saying. You're saying that even when they are informative, we can't even trust it.
Right. That's the reason why fans have the distrust, is because on one moment we're getting all this information. Oh yeah, this is coming out. Oh, then we don't hear like I said, the Patty Jenkins movie. You got the whole Top Gun thing. She's climbing out of the X-wing.
Yep, I know. She's taking pictures next to an X-wing. It's like, it's happening. Right?
She got the full flight. So we're all like jazzing, and then nothing. Then it's like, oh, well, now Wonder Woman. No, well, she's back on. Oh, wait, no, it's on hold again. Oh, no, it's like, so that's what I'm saying. It's like you deliver it to us, and then it's like being an Indian giver. You give it to us, and then we understand, like you said, like certain things we understand that we can't control. Writer strikes, a whole pandemic. Okay, that no one can necessarily control that.
Right.
However, but when you have stuff like, oh, okay, yeah, we fired the director, he's 80% done with the movie, and then we bringing in somebody else to finish it up, and it's just like, okay, and then we don't get a trailer on it for 2 weeks before the stupid thing open. I mean, it just creates that sense of like, what the heck? When if you're going to tell us, okay, hey, look, we hit a snag, this is what's going on, but it'll be fine. Cool. It happens in production all the time. However, if you keep your clients being us, the viewers, the fans, if you keep coming back to your client telling like, well, we're having this problem, we're having this problem, we're having this problem, the client's going to start to wonder, are you really capable of doing the job or what? Because Marvel isn't having this problem.
Well, yeah. Well, and here's the thing, though. Marvel, well, this actually gets us to something that Ronaldo was talking about. He basically says there's a recent example with DC Studios. Many people got mad when James Gunn revealed his plan. It's just that I can't see a scenario where Lucasfilm reveal the plan and people don't get mad about it. We won't. We understand that we have to wait and see, but there are many people that don't. And then he goes on to say, it's just that I can't see... Oh, well, I guess basically it was just a repeated chat. Yeah, no, I get that. And look, you have to balance the whole subjectivity of film into all this too, right? I mean, you can't please all the people all the time, as they say. Right. But I think what you and I are talking about here isn't the subjectivity of, hey, you announce something and fans just aren't happy with the direction. It's like a mishandling of the franchise. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about like, you know, you're letting a director or two directors make 80% of a film and then replacing them. And now you're having to reshoot half of it. You know, you're bringing in Rogue One, which is obviously a really good thing, right? But Gareth Edwards, they brought in Tony McGilroy.
Tony Gilroy.
Tony Gilroy to punch it up a little bit. And as a result, like 90% of what we see in the trailer is not even there. I mean, these are like really big issues that That's franchise or a studio, right, like Lucasfilm, I mean, come on, you guys are professionals. You know, this shouldn't be happening. This is what happens when you start a studio for the first time and you're kind of learning and everything. You know, these guys went in. There's even a rumor, but it's a strong rumor. This isn't one of those like unfounded Mike Zero type things. This is like something that's a little bit more real, that George Lucas has actually been approached to step back into the franchise, and his whole thing is like, okay, I'll do it, but I have to have full control. And that's where they're quietly behind the scenes making this deal. But you have to do that. And the problem is that on one hand, they're not listening enough to what the fans want. And then on the other hand, they're listening too much because they're flip-flopping, because they're so afraid. It's like, it's something that you said on many of the shows we did. You know, stop trying to make a good Star Wars movie. Just make a good movie. Don't worry about, you know, is this going to be like some mind-melting entry into the franchise or something? That's all.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. That's my biggest thing, is that I think that as fans, we do appreciate the updates, because that's the thing. It's like when it's progressive, we're happy. You know, it's like, hey, we announced this movie, pre-production's already started. Okay, principal photography is already done. You know, okay, we're into this phase of the production. All right, that's been completed. Okay, the movie's been shot. You know, all the reshoots are done. You know, now we're editing the film. Yep, it's still coming out December of whatever year. Okay, all's right with the world, fans. We can't wait to see it. You know, hey, what do you think we're going to get the trailer? Oh, probably like around Thanksgiving. All right, cool. Great. Now, on the flip side of that, when we're still getting updates, but when the updates are like you just said, oh, you know, we had to, you know, fire Gina Carano because she said something on Twitter. Oh, because this director, we didn't like the direction that they were going, so we're scrapping that. Or we know we're going to push that film back 2 more years. It's kind of like you said, like, why are you having these types of problems? As you said, as a professional studio, like, these are things that you feel like should have been worked out by now, and at this point, it should just be execute.
Well, it's like Ronaldo says, good rant, Eric. Said it was awesome. And I don't just put that there just, you know, because it's somewhat self-congratulatory for me to do so. I put that there because this is a kind of thing that I think is representative of a lot of fans, and I think that that's part of the reason why the franchise is, because again, I mean, even in the firing of Gina Carano, since you brought that up, I mean, how stupid do you have to be? She's a person. She has opinions. It's not like she's dressed up as Cara Dune with the Star Wars logo behind her and spouting off all this stuff, right? I mean, it's kind of like you're letting a small group of people that might be offended by something control the entire direction of a billion-dollar franchise.
Yeah, but that's what happens.
Look, I know that's the world we live in. I get that, but I'm just saying that it's stupid, right?
It is,
I mean,
very stupid.
There's a lot of things. Like, look, we were just called on. There was a person that commented on our Visions episode because we were talking about the chick with the lightsaber umbrella or whatever, and she was like going on about how we misidentified a black female as a male or something like weird. I'm like, dude, we got a black co-host. I'm sure if there was anything. Now, granted, she did say, hey, listen, I know it was an honest mistake, which it was because, I don't know. I thought it was the main character that had that weird lightsaber umbrella. But it just shows you, like, how sensitive people are. And in case I'm not clear, because you and I are on the same page on this, if you're here because, you're tiptoeing around and you're like, oh, look at me, I don't want my feelings hurt, you're watching the wrong show. This is not the YouTube channel for you. You might as well hit the unsubscribe button right now. That's not what we do here. Right?
Tell him, Rick. That's Rick right there.
This is honest dialogue. Look, I respect everybody's opinions. I respect, whatever you want to do, but no. This is not the YouTube channel for you, man.
Or woman,
or whatever you identify as. This is like hardcore, honest, spoiler sprinkled discussion. And, yeah. I mean, dude, really? I mean, I read that comment. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. But again, I answered the person nicely because, they put in like, they weren't ranting. They weren't, they were just like, hey, whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks for, and actually, I'm kind of glad she pointed that out because it really was a different character. Now, of course, if you want to see you and I at odds about something, just watch on Mondays when we're reviewing Visions. Because 90% of the time, you end up, like, hating it and tearing on it for, like, a half hour. And I end up, usually going, well, the animation was cool or whatever. I mean, I'm trying to defend it in some kind of weird way. All right, so Ronaldo's like... he says, by the way, when do you think James Mangold's movie will come out?
I believe 2025. I believe that's the December of 2025. That's what's the tentative date. They haven't given exact, but that's thereabouts.
Really? Because that seems like that might be kind of an aggressive production schedule, considering the epic that he wants to make, I'm saying.
Well, I mean, that's what I said. Pre-production's already started. It started in April.
No, I get that. I'm just saying that, I mean, because think about it, man. He's trying to make like some 10 Commandments. Now, granted, I get it, right? Making a 10 Commandments epic movie type of thing now is not like it was in 1930, whatever. But, yeah, it's still, we're halfway into 2023. It just seems like if you're going to release this in 2025, unless you're shooting all this on the heck is the this is embarrassing. The volume. Volume, yes. I couldn't think of what the thing was. I knew it started with a V, man. I didn't know what it was called. Sue me. Jeez.
I know.
Wait, why is that coming up? What's going on here?
But
all right, I'm gonna have to read I don't know why. Something's up with our comments thing. Ronaldo says, Rick, Dark Lord of the Sith, we have your dark side name now.
Darth Rick.
Yes,
Right.
well, I'm sure there'll be some dislikes on this video, given that people are
Probably.
ultra sensitive now.
But but yeah, no, I mean I think that um
What's it dealing here?
with
Let me
with
see.
this film, it's one of those things where it has to be just flushed out. And I think that's the biggest part about Star Wars that's really frustrating to fans, especially with these characters. And the characters are associated with the time. So Ray, Poe, and Finn are associated with the sequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy was divisive to a lot of Star Wars fans. Ergo, I don't want to see anything else with them because it reminds me of a bad time. Whereas, like,
Yep.
instead of looking at it from the standpoint of, hey, we can take these characters and now, without the pressure of having Han, Luke, and Leia and Yoda around, we can possibly, or if there are, if like Luke pops up, which I'm sure he probably will, it's more in that Obi-Wan kind of way. So, but without the pressure of having them around, you can now truly focus on these characters, and hopefully they can build something that's actually credible, something that's actually good and well thought out. And that's the thing is, you talked about how George Lucas might have to come back. And it's hard when Star Wars came from the mind of one man. We talk about this all the time. It's much like Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry came up with Star Trek. But the thing is that fortunately, unlike Star Trek has allowed, and because you have a lot of things that you can do with Star Trek because it's fiction. I mean, it's science fiction, so you actually have scientific things that are, but even that has its flaws. But at least you have scientific basis to go up based off on. Whereas Star
Yeah.
Wars is fantasy, so it follows a different rule, different blueprint. So now you kind of have to approach it in a different way. But hopefully, with the Disney studios, they can actually come up with something that's cohesive, not try to reinvent the wheel, but like you said, Eric, just tell a good story in
Tell a
Star
good
Wars.
story. Yeah. Ronaldo says, if you ask me, Mangold's movie will come out in at least 2030. He's also directing Swamp Thing. I mean, yeah, who knows? It's really tough, I think, for them to weave in this stuff because, like Ronaldo says, right? I mean, these guys are doing all these different things. I mean, who knows? You bring up a good thing about Star Trek, though, because not so much the Star Trek now, but when Star Trek The Next Generation was happening, some of the films were happening, you had almost a similar situation because at that point, Rick Berman had taken over Star Trek.
Yeah.
And you had this fan battle, right? Where you had people that really were more into the Gene Roddenberry version and didn't like a lot of the changes that Rick Berman was making. And so I think you're starting to see a similar situation here because everybody was widely panning a lot of the things in the prequel trilogy and, George Lucas is ruining my childhood or whatever. Now you're seeing a bunch of things of, and it just shows you how just completely fickle and everything the Star Wars audience has become. Because it went from tearing them apart to all of a sudden becoming this whole, oh, we want Lucas back. Yeah, you all weren't saying that back in the early 2000s. You were basically calling for his head. Now all of a sudden you want him back. And again, it's because, you thought it was bad back then. And then if you're one of those fans that really isn't into the sequel trilogy now, you're going, oh, this is really bad. Now that prequel trilogy, let me take a second look at it. Now Hayden Christensen and Ahmed Best are getting standing ovations.
Well, the thing is, I think the only thing about this prequel trilogy that has made it bad, it wasn't the stories. I think it was just more so just how it was directed.
Yeah.
But that's because George Lucas directed all of those films. When you had and you're holding it up against the monument of the original trilogy, primarily Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Now, of course, like we just did ad nauseum, we broke down all those movies, right?
Yeah, we did.
And
we sure did.
So
buckle up if you watch those. Those things are like 2-3 hours long. We did. If you want an
longer than the movie
exhaustive,
sometimes.
yeah, right. If you really want an exhaustive, deep dive into each one of those films, go back and watch our What Is Star Wars series. It's enlightening.
Yes, and I think that's the biggest thing, though. I think when you're looking at the original trilogy, the monument that it was, and the cult classic that it became, and then now you're thinking like, okay, George Lucas he's doing it again, right? The only difference is one, he's doing it with brand new technology once again. That yes, he did it with brand new technology even in the 70s. However, this technology doesn't require actors. So now trying to direct an actor to emote or do things when there's no one there and you're not a actor's director, that becomes problematic. But the story itself, I mean, the whole Trade Federation thing and that whole the blockade, and okay, like from the political side, like you have to show how a war began because it's called Star Wars. How did where's the war?
Well, here's
okay.
What's funny about that whole thing, right? Because at work, I mean, Doug actually watches the show sometimes, and I actually brought that up. I said, well, I mean, the story was cool, right? The old Trade Federation. He's looking at me with this like blank look on his face, going, really? You like that part of it? You like the whole treaties and Trade Federation and all that? Like, I've started to actually feel a little bit like, well, yeah, kind of. I mean, but again, I think a lot of the reasons why people actually look at it and go, that's kind of like, it's because of how it was handled, it was how it was executed. I mean, look, you watch a Tom Clancy novel, I mean, okay, granted, there's action and all this other stuff, but I mean, there's basically a basis there of political intrigue. That's kind of what it was like.
Well, if you really think about the original trilogy, we're dropped into something that's already has existed for a period of time.
Right.
It's almost like if Rocky Balboa was already the heavyweight champion, he's already beaten Apollo, but like we never saw, okay.
Right, like if Rocky 3, like if they started with Rocky 3 and then made like 4 and 5 and then went back and showed us like 1 and 2 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because we need to see how he became the Italian Stallion, why he's so loved and revered. It's like, we don't know why. It's just, all right, he's Rocky.
Ooh, that's a good point, because after you see 3 and 4, especially how exciting they were, and then you went back and you're like, really? You like watching them in like some like bargain basement gym and it's kind of boring and all that? Exactly.
Yeah,
not to mention the fact
Adrian and all.
And here's my thing, and here's what I would say. I didn't actually say this to Doug. I wish I had thought of it at the time, but it's like, dude, he's a Star Trek fan. If you're a Star Trek fan, really, like, there's never been boring procedural type stuff in Star Trek. Really, like Star Trek the movie. Does anybody remember that movie? I mean, you want to talk about probably the slowest moving movie of all time. So my thing is, if you're a Star Trek fan, you cannot at that point criticize the plot line, at least, of the Trade Federation, that whole political thing. At least the execution, I'm 100% with you there. Right? Because we agree that...
It was just the execution of that's really what made it bad, because you need to understand, like, okay, how did the emperor become the emperor? I mean, like, the whole Trade Federation. I mean, if without that, you don't see how Palpatine ascends to becoming the emperor. So, like, it's important to the story.
Well, but
like you say,
but to play devil's advocate for a second, I mean, just to play devil's advocate for just one quick second here, I could see an argument where people might go, okay, they could still do something like that within the framework of a slightly more exciting, developed storyline. Because, look, here, let me get this up here for a quick second, because Ronaldo makes a good point. He's like, my lord, is that legal? He's like, I love that line. Legal. It's like, I mean, yeah, I get it, man. I mean... But again, you have to hang on to what Daryl and I are talking about here is more like the story, the plot, not the lines, not the execution, not the Yeah. Look, I'm 100% with you guys. And look, if you want to see something funny, well, our Rise of Skywalker review was hilarious. But I think our Phantom Menace review was up there with it. Like we criticized that a lot, I think. I mean, we went through it. And here's one other thing. Let me just say this for the George Lucas part of it. Everybody's talking about how Lucas would be the hero. Like he should be making, this little Rey movie over here, right? But keep in mind that his idea, now he did have somebody who I think actually was Kira. I think when they named Kira in the Solo film, they actually lifted that from Lucas's proposed sequel trilogy, because Kira, they spelled it a little different though. And they had essentially Luke training this. So it was kind of like that Luke and Rey dynamic, but it was different. But look, they had, the Force was actually like these nanobots or something. I mean, if you really read Lucas's treatment for episodes 7, 8, 9, it was kind of out there. I don't necessarily know if that had been made, if the Star Wars fans would have really necessarily embraced this. You know what I mean?
You're right. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about George Lucas. He's a phenomenal storyteller, but he's not really always the best director. And so that's why Indiana Jones, so successful. Once again, amazing story. Spielberg.
Well, but again, though, see, this is you're onto something. I mean, you didn't mean to be, I don't think, but because you're talking about you're talking about the earlier stuff, right? But really, the whole Indiana Jones thing has been suffering the same fate, right? Because everybody hated Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like they hated Shia LaBeouf's character, and they could generally hang with the plot up until the whole alien thing. That's when everybody was like, okay, this is stupid, worst Indiana Jones film ever. People are already criticizing Dial of Destiny, even though it's not even out yet. So even though it only has like 5 movies or something, it's suffering somewhat of a microcosm of Star Wars, where everybody loves the first 3. Everybody hates the last 2. I mean, we'll see when Dial of Destiny... Actually, that comes out this year, right? Like in June or something?
Yeah. I think it's a summer blockbuster movie.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll have to see. But, again, I mean, I think that a lot of times what happens, and it might be the same thing in Indiana Jones's case, is that they're trying to make a good Indiana Jones film instead of just making a good film.
But we'll have to see, man. Like I'm not holding my breath on the end of this. Honestly, I mean, I'm at that point in my fandom where I'm just kind of like,
you're just kind of like, we're gonna take it at a film by film basis here,
Yeah, day at a time, until there's some consistency where we can start seeing the machine start to develop like quality stuff on a more regular basis. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the 15 years, I think that's enough removed from Rise of Skywalker. I think that gives Rey time to grow. So now if she's even more powerful, it's understandable. She's had 15 years since that time. She's has Jedi texts. She's probably had conversation with Luke and Leia now. Maybe even Ben. Who knows? Ben might even come talk to her. That would be interesting too. But yeah, there's potential. It's just, but we can't ride off potential alone. It ultimately, comes down to execution, and whoever has the best execution will always win.
Well, that's the problem. I think the potential has long been the promise that Lucasfilm never seems to deliver, because every time we hate something, we just go, well, this next one's got the potential to be something cool, and then they let us down again. And it's like, how many times do you have to be the abused wife before you finally realize, this guy's not going to change, I got to leave him, kind of a thing. And
well, yeah, and The only thing I will say to that though is that there's good things that happen in between that, and that's what always gives us the hope. Kind of to your analogy, I mean,
Exactly. That was the exact
is
reason
that
for the analogy.
yeah,
Well, he's not always abusive. I mean, that's exactly. It's like there's been some cool things, but again, you can only give a free pass to look. I mean, I grew up with this franchise. I love this franchise. I live, eat it, breathe it. But again, we've always said, look, we're not going to be Star Wars apologists either. I mean, if they're messing up, we're going to point that out. And so right now, we're extending some credit to them. Like, okay, and I think what keeps everybody coming back, honestly, is the fact that, look, there are so many good stories you could be telling. Look at what the novels have done. Look at what the comics have done. I mean, that's proof that if you know what you're doing, you really can come up with something cool. It's just, and so every time they screw it up, you're kind of like, well, I mean, you get the right guy in there or girl or whatever to write something cool and to do it. I think you have something. Let me get a couple of these other chats in here because Ronaldo's got one. He says, well, to be fair, Lucas did say a couple of years ago that he's sure that the fans would have hated his sequels. He's not wrong. He was going full on midichlorians. Absolutely. It was even worse than midichlorians. Now, Peter Griffin writes us, I love that name. Star Wars is about balance. A powerful force like Rey has to have an equal and opposite reaction. They need to establish a Sith Lord, like a Palpatine Vader had Obi-Wan and Yoda out there to balance them. Do they dare make Ezra Grogu be dark side users? I doubt it. And see, this is a really good point, though, because that's what the sequel trilogy, particularly Rise of Skywalker, was missing, is that you didn't have, well, I mean, you kind of, because you had Palpatine or whatever, but I mean, if you really go back and look at the Rise of Skywalker, and we pointed this out during our whole little review, that there was no challenge. They just kind of walked through everything, and nothing was a challenge. Everything came easily, and they do. I mean, if they're going to make this new Rey film, they absolutely have to give her some sort of a powerful antagonist that will give a sense of drama and tension and, just, I don't know, some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just some opposition.
Yeah, just the problem is that, like I said, with Rey being who she is, she's super powerful. You're going to have to find, like he said, and even Snoke said it, when darkness rises, light rises to meet it, and vice versa. So I think the problem is that you need someone who's going to be able to really stand up to Rey and be formidable. We have to feel like our heroes are in danger at some point. We have to feel that way. Now, in original trilogy, Luke was constantly in danger. He had Vader on his heels in New Hope, and it was just like he's the last ship, and Vader is like closing, and he's Vader is kind of struggling with him because he's like, wait a minute, the Force is strong with this one. What the heck is going on? But then he eventually said, I have you now. Had it not been for Han, Luke would have been wasted out of there.
Well, and that's it too. That's another actually really strong point, right? Is that you have to put people around her. So it's not just her, because that's the other problem that I had is the fact that Rey was just able to mow down everybody. I mean, Kylo kind of gave her a little bit of a run for her money in a way, but, it was kind of like nobody was really too threatening. And It's like you said, you have to have somebody where she's not constantly getting herself in and out of trouble. Like there's some real danger there, and then somebody else, like maybe Finn or somebody, comes in and helps.
That's why the coolest moment in the sequel trilogy had that, and it had exactly what you were saying. Was that moment when Rey and Kylo were before Snoke, and then those Praetorian
Yes.
guards. It's like that was
Yes.
the only moment. See, that was it shows you right there, because it's like, all right, had Kylo not helped Rey, like Rey would have been, she couldn't have did anything with Snoke or the Praetorian
No.
guards.
No.
But
Not
it
at
took
all.
the both of them to kind of like, all right, do their little dyad thing, and
Well, that's a
but
good point too, right? Because that's the only time that I actually felt like Rey wasn't all powerful and just able to just go
right,
through and mow everybody down. I mean,
yeah, and it's
you
like
can make the argument in The Force Awakens she didn't, but she was accidentally killing everybody. I mean, come on.
right. That's what I'm saying. But Snoke actually embarrassed her.
Yeah,
That was the cool thing.
completely.
She came in there all like, he's gonna be da da da, and then she tries to use a lightsaber. He slaps her up the head with. I mean, that was just.
Oh,
I
that
mean, I
was
was
funny.
cracking up, man. And then the fact that he just did this, and she's just like suspended in the air, and she had nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yeah, which actually brings me to a problem that I wish I had brought up during The Rise of Skywalker. It's like she had less of a problem against Palpatine than against Snoke. Now, I know a lot of people are just going to like hammer on where it's like, yeah, but she's had more time to train and she was further ahead in The Rise of Skywalker. And, there's truth to that.
Sure,
But not, look, she only had another year or something. I mean, this is Palpatine we're talking about. He made Snoke. He's the most powerful Sith Lord probably ever. I mean, sure, I know a lot of canon junkies are probably going to come out and go, well, Darth Nihilist or whatever. I mean, yes, I am aware that there were other guys. Exar Kun always being one of my favorites. But by and large, a lot of times people agree that, Palpatine was, if not the most powerful, he was definitely in like the top 3 or something. So,
right.
Again, she had less of a problem against Palpatine. Now, other people I'm sure could point out, again, playing devil's advocate here a little bit, that because Palpatine needed her and she was his offspring and stuff like that, that he might not have been as ruthless against her as he might have been anybody else that went up against him. But still, I can't help but just notice that you just brought it up, and honestly, this is the first time I ever thought about it. Snoke actually looked way more powerful than Palpatine in this instance. I mean, other than the Force lightning and, all the other stuff he did. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, she,
Right.
she had no problems, it seemed, vanquishing Palpatine, and I get it. The whole idea was, yeah, well, the Jedi were behind her and all that. And it's like, I don't know, man. I understand on paper what that story was supposed to be. I think it could have been executed a little bit better, though.
Sure.
But
yeah,
I don't know.
mean, and that's what I mean. It's just that's what we're saying. It's like, okay, they made her too powerful, and my thing is like, once again, the fact that Palpatine brought up the fact that there's a dyad in the Force, and it's like, okay, it would have been cooler if Kylo helped in that manner. But it's like, okay, you got Rey with, 2 lightsabers doing this, making an X, and Palpatine just shooting himself basically with lightning.
I have no idea what that was all about.
And you're telling me like, oh,
and again,
okay.
I know, look, during both, I think actually both, even the recent review we did of the movie, I get it. It's like Palpatine is so just consumed with, I don't know if you want to call it, I don't even know. Maybe arrogance.
It's
I guess
arrogance and ego. Yeah, he just feels like I'm more powerful than you.
Yeah, but at some point you do have to think, like, if you're Palpatine and you're doing this, it's like, well, at some point this is actually hurting me more than it's hurting you, right? Like you would feel like this is coming back at you, going, maybe I should just not do this.
Well, the thing is, what made it stupid was that he's been here before.
Yeah, with the Mace Windu thing.
Exactly. Like you've been here before, dude. Like
this is not new. Well, here's what I thought would have been cooler, and this would have
that's how you
been
got ugly in the first place.
yeah.
You know.
And my thing is, this is where it was so stupid. It was just stupid. What should have happened was, and what would have been a more fitting ending, because remember, at that point, Palpatine was actually starting to regenerate, because, I mean, that was actually one of my favorite parts, when he just sort of accidentally started sucking their power out, and he was like, ooh, a dyad. Hey, this hasn't been seen in a while, and you guys are actually regenerating me, so, you know that little thing that I was telling you about, how you're going to be the new Emperor? Yeah, no, change of plans. I'm basically going to suck the entire life force out of you, and regenerate, and guess what? I'm going to be Emperor, and I'm going to kill you. See, that was cool. That made sense. Now, what I would have liked to see is in his regenerated, maybe more powerful form, because he wasn't hung up by like a crane or something.
Like Jib.
You know, maybe he starts using force powers, lightsabers, duels. You know, maybe we get a little bit of that Mace, Mace Palpatine battle kind of thing. I mean, it just... To me, that just would have made more sense.
Or it would have been a cool, like, now that we know that people can kind of come back and do stuff. See, it would have been cool if Luke would have kind of finally and actually been the one to vanquish.
That was
Palpatine
actually
too.
what I was hoping would happen. I was hoping that Luke would sort of get that rematch. Yeah. Because why not? I mean, here's the thing that's really funny to me is when people go, well, I don't know, that would have been kind of stupid. I'm like, really? In comparison to what?
Well, the fact that we know that, like, they can affect, we saw what Yoda was able to do with the tree. And
that's what I mean. And plus Palpatine regenerating. It's like, look, kind of the way we used to, that ship has sailed. We're kind of in a new rule type of thing here. These guys could pretty much do whatever they want at this point. Plus, people forget this. The original draft of Return of the Jedi, back when it was Revenge of the Jedi, the ending was supposed to be that Obi-Wan and Yoda, as Force Ghosts, came back and faced against Palpatine. That's how it was supposed to go. Now, Lucas, of course, scrapped that, though, but...
And it would have made sense, because if you remember the line from Empire, when Obi-Wan basically said, like, well, if you're going to face him, I can't help you.
Right.
You have to do it basically by yourself.
Well, that would have
how are you going to help?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my thing is like, well, how is he going to help? Like, you're already dead. How are you going to help? Like, what are we going to, like, pull his cape or something and I get the stabbing blow or something? Like, that means almost that Obi-Wan would have had to have come back in some shape or form.
Hey, man, it's not the first time Obi-Wan bent the truth a little bit,
That's true.
That whole part, you remember when I said I can't help you? Yeah, that was a lie, too. This is funny. Ronaldo's trying to bring us back on topic here. He says, so, the Rey movie. Do you think it'll be the last time we see her? He thinks, let me get this here. He thinks it depends if the movie makes money or not. And also, will Oscar Isaac return? And then, of course, he reiterates her thing of, there's been rumors of John Boyega coming back, but nothing on him. So,
I think that if hopefully they make this a one-off movie and not a trilogy.
Oh, I don't think it's going to be a trilogy.
If they make it a one-off movie, because, if they make it a one-off, and if it does well, they'll probably make more. If not, then they can just walk away from it.
Well, okay, that's probably what's going to happen, sort of like in a macro view. But I think with Ronaldo, correct me if I'm wrong, as you usually do. I think what he's saying, though, is not necessarily like a trilogy. I think he's saying, okay, if this movie is successful, he thinks they would. Do we think they would bring Rey back in? It doesn't necessarily have to be a Rey movie. Actually, this one's probably not going to be. Depending on whether or not Kathleen Kennedy is telling us the full truth or not, she's not supposed to be the main character of this film. Even though that synopsis that we did read earlier in the show somewhat tells a different story, in my opinion, because it kind of makes her sound like she is. But she could still be a central figure It's very similar to how Obi-Wan was in A New Hope. He had a presence. He definitely carried the story along. He was a very important plot point, but he wasn't the center of the film. And I think that that's how they're going to maybe do Rey, right? They're going to make her an important driver of the film, but not necessarily the central character like she was. Almost kind of how Luke maybe is in the sequels.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's possible.
Well, Star Wars, anything's possible, right? Ronaldo says, yeah, the movie is a success. I think we'll see her in something else, trilogy or not. Exactly. Like, she could just pop up in, I don't know, some other post-Rise of Skywalker film. He says, maybe like a Force ghost. Well, that's if she dies. At this point, I don't know what could kill Rey. I mean, you're kind of implying that, this
Rey's like a Jason Voorhees.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's kind of like, you kind of have to die to be a Force ghost. I'm just saying. So I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, but like Thanos, got to go for the head.
Pretty much. Or something. But no, I do. I think it is entirely possible that we could see Rey pop up. Like, maybe this is going to seed out different films that take place in this particular era or part of the universe, right? So you have Rey rebuilding the Jedi Order. She's having some issues. Not even sure who's left. That part was intriguing to me because it's true. Like, well, how many Jedi are there really? I mean, is Ahsoka still around? Maybe not, but maybe. Ezra, Grogu. That's where Peter Griffin makes some good points. Who knows who else is out there? And so you have to wonder, like, okay, if they put...
And that's part of the story, too.
That's part of the story, too. And if they put Rey in sort of that Obi-Wan, I'm guiding along the film, but I'm not necessarily the central character, well, then whoever is the central character then maybe has their own movie, and maybe Rey appears in. And Ronaldo says, hey, maybe Grogu will be the main character. Maybe. He's young enough. Definitely. He would be, so let's say, if he's like around 50 during The Mandalorian, he'd be around 95 by the time of this film. So,
yep.
95 is nothing. That's like it's probably like a teenager and whatever that is. Oh, my blue light just disappeared. I knew I should have charged that battery. Yeah, right.
Is
that the time where it's time to sign off? Hey, I'm still lit, man. I can still go. But meanwhile, you're over there with your phone, like turning off lights and.
The next is the microphone.
Yeah, exactly. Next is the microphone. It's like, I don't know what happened. Well, anyway, yeah, we have like maybe 30, 40 seconds left. If you guys haven't had a chance to click the yes or no in the poll, we just want to know how many of you guys actually even want to see a Rey movie. So just take some time to go into the chat and answer the poll if you can. If you guys are watching the rebroadcast of it, then let us know in the comments section. Do you think that there even should be this Rey movie? Do you want to see them maybe tackle something else in the Star Wars universe that would be of more interest to you? Ronaldo says, the light died on Eric. Side is dead. You released all the darkness within your rant. Yes.
Darth Rick.
And yeah, definitely hit the subscribe button because we might lose some people tonight. So I need you guys that we're going to need to make up that deficit of people that's undoubtedly going to lose. And hey, speaking of triggers, we're going to be doing another Visions episode on Monday. Who knows what we'll say on that episode. And neither one of us have seen it yet, like we said earlier in the show. So it should be really interesting. We're going to do episode 2. I remember, Ronaldo, you kind of warned us a little bit when we did Monday's show about episode 2. I should also point out that Ronaldo's the reason why we started doing these. So we're in it for the long haul. So you guys are gonna want to tune in Monday. Check us out, 8:00. He says, I think you'll like episode 2 or not. So I think I'll like episode 2 and you won't. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here.
Works.
But yeah, if you guys want to see, will Daryl actually like a Visions episode? That's going to be the question of the week. You have to watch us on Monday, and we're going to get into it. You know, it's not like our Friday show where it's a ridiculous amount of time. You know, you don't have to worry about it. It's not a really big investment. Daryl doesn't want to talk about Visions that long, so you're talking maybe a half hour, 40 minutes max. So be sure to join us Monday night at 8. As always, we love talking Star Wars with you guys. I want to thank everybody that chatted in tonight. I want to thank everybody that watched. I want to thank everybody that comments, because you guys keep us honest. Look, even though I was kind of razzing out that person that, commented on the Visions thing, I mean, it did keep us honest, right? Because I thought it was the main character, and it turned out to be somebody different. I had forgotten that. So, we appreciate that. So keep it up, guys. All right, so with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.